all your school rugby, all in one place. This is Next Gen 15.
Welcome back to the Next Gen 15 podcast. We're back again for another episode, and it's a bit of a special one this week because it's all about the under-26 nations, and we've got a couple of special guests a little later on to talk to us. But before we talk to anyone else, we talk to Will Roberts. How are you, Will?
Hello, Angus. Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Yeah, pretty excited for this one. You've sort of whipped your contacts book out on the table and selected a couple, and they're pretty good catches.
Well, do you know what? I'm going to offer a load of praise, and I don't often do this, so I'm going to offer a load of praise to the RFU and to Ryan Fitzgerald Nolan in particular, who are making a real effort, particularly with the Pathways program, with the 18s and the 20s. And a little bit with the England A team, actually, to get media involved as much as possible, partly to highlight what's going on with these junior teams, but also partly, I think, to help the guys get a bit of media training and exposure. But it's a massive difference to 4 or 5 years ago, where just getting a team sheet sometimes with any sort of haste out of the pathway could be a bit of a challenge. So it's all praise to them and what they're doing. Before we get started, we've got to remind everyone how to watch us, where to get in contact, and all the rest of it. You can watch us on YouTube. You can listen to us on pretty much everywhere, I think. Acast, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, various others that I don't use, but I'm told that it all works on. So wherever you find these things, you can go and get involved. And if you want to chat to us, then please do get involved with your questions and your thoughts and your criticisms on at NextGen15, at NextGenXV, and on the NextGen15 Clubhouse. But Will, it's under-20s week. It's everyone else in the world is talking about the start of the Six Nations. Very nice. We're going to be talking about the start of the under-20s Six Nations. Last year was a bit of an epic competition.
Yeah.
No Grand Slam because England and Ireland drew 32-all, but some serious competition. And actually, probably the bit we might end up starting with, those teams in the bottom half. We spoke last week about that sort of 3x3 league with England, Ireland and France as the sort of top three, and Wales, Scotland, Italy as the bottom three. But actually, the competitiveness across the six, probably better last year than it has been at any point in the last 4 or 5 years.
Absolutely. I think that we're more likely to get an upset and a break of that three this year than we have in quite a while. I think for a multitude of reasons. I think England are as strong as probably they have been in many a time, and we're obviously talking to those from the England contingent this podcast, and they will certainly prove that. They've got the toughest test you'd imagine first up against Ireland in Ireland, so that'd be interesting. But I think the Scotland have named a pretty exciting under-20s setup and squads. Likewise, Italy. There are a few names that have come through from the English schoolboy scene, which is a scene that we know fairly well, so can reference and sort of see, where these teams are kind of at. Because it's always difficult to gauge for us because we can't be across every single nation, every single age grade, but that kind of gives us a bit of litmus test. And look, there'll be two good squads. Wales, we don't know where Wales are at the moment, but from what we've seen from their announcements of their senior squad, they're kind of reverting back to type in terms of getting their experience in Faletau, Williams, Tompkins, all back in the starting 15 for them. And you can imagine that might have a knock-on effect for their under-20s. We might get a few players that were named initially in the senior squad that could then apply their trade at under-20s over the next 6 weeks or so. So, yeah, I think if there's 1 year that can kind of spell for maybe an upset, like we saw kind of with Italy over the last 2-3 years ago when they started sort of tearing up trees, it could be this year.
Yeah, I mean, it's, as I say, it's a pretty exciting one. I'm sort of with you. I think well, we mentioned it last week. Wales is in a funny sort of way the most exciting squad to be in because you feel like anything could happen there in terms of guys coming in and guys perhaps even coming down from the senior squad and perhaps guys getting called up by the senior squad.
Yeah,
I mean, it
could go either way. Yeah,
all feels possible, doesn't it? Everyone else, by and large, feels relatively stable in terms of that in and out. Although obviously England, we're going to be touching on this a bit later when we chat to Mark Mapletoft, but they've got a guy who's jumping between the seniors and the twenties in the form of Henry Pollock, and it does feel across the board, doesn't it, like, as if the 20 setup is being regarded across all the nations as being very close to the senior squad, whereas in years gone by, it's felt a very long way away. It's felt as though it's almost the first step on the ladder. It feels a few more rungs up the ladder now than it perhaps has.
yeah, I'd agree with that. I think that is certainly proof with what we've seen, of course, with Henry and others and the like. I think, yeah, traveling to Ireland first. This Irish side are also going through quite a lot of change. They've pretty much got a brand new squad, as of England. But as we said, the asterisks across England's new squad is is pretty remarkable because there's a lot of players that we know very well that haven't even got an England under 20s cap yet. But I think it's Ireland are this first game really does intrigue me because Ireland are the coached very well, not necessarily with the top names that have been playing a lot of rugby. It's so difficult to break into one of the provinces at under 20s level. It's I mean, some Ireland internationals are struggling to get into that Leinster team, so like it's just the way it is. But it means that they rely heavily on their coaching and unity, rather than necessarily individuals. And I'd say this England under 20 side is one of the most, and I mean this in the best way, individualistic sides that we've seen in quite a while because they have so many standout names. So that clash between team unity and sort of, yeah, individualistic flair. Not saying that England won't come with a game plan and won't try and stick to that throughout the 80 minutes. I think that's going to be a real clash. But yeah, as you say, the interchangeability between under 20s and seniors is becoming more and more, and that's a credit to the people in charge of the age grade programs, obviously Mark Mapletoft in particular, as well as this crop of players that are coming through.
Yeah, and we can extrapolate that out even to the Scotland squad. You know, in the back row they've got Freddy Douglas, who made his Scotland debut back in the autumn, got more game time I think than he was expecting because he impressed Gregor Townsend so much. And he's part of the under 20s group for this Six Nations. So I mean, you're seeing it across nations. You're seeing, I think, a real determination for people to bring through youth, and that for some reason, time and time again, the back row is the area where these things seem to crop up. For people that don't know the under 26 nations, basically mirrors the men's Six Nations in that it's the same fixtures on the same weeks as the senior Six Nations, just played on slightly different days. And this week is weirder than usual because normally they're all on a Friday night, ahead of the weekend's games. But instead, this week we start with Ireland against England on Thursday. On Saturday, on Friday we then have Scotland against Italy, which is in this sort of traditional under 20 slot.
Yeah.
But then because the senior France-Wales game is on Friday night, the under 20s France-Wales game is actually on Saturday afternoon. So we've got a very odd setup to begin with, but spread across 3 days, which is quite nice. So we get our fix over the week, really.
Exactly. Usually with this under 20s, you kind of have to have like multiple monitors on at once and sort of trying to keep track, and you can't necessarily outline who's where, because you can't watch 3 games simultaneously. But
I've tried. It's impossible.
Yeah, it is. this time you can, and I think that will not only be a benefit to us as viewers, but a benefit to the club, to the sides and nations, because there's no doubt that once England and Ireland have finished their game on Thursday, they'll be huddling around a TV or monitor on a Friday night, going, "Okay, let's have a look at how Scotland and Italy are looking." The exact same could be applied to that Wales-France game, and they'll all want to have a good look at each other, because, as we say, this is a tight competition, and I don't know about you, but I don't necessarily like when we have the senior game before the under-20s game, because I like the under-20s game being like the curtain raiser and sort of being, okay, well, this is what it could look like in 5 years, but let's have a look at what it's going to look like now. But I don't know that.
Oh, I agree with you. It almost makes me hark back to a time long before your time, but when we used to have A games on Six Nations weeks.
Yeah.
And you'd have Friday night was the A game, Saturday afternoon was the Six Nations game, and that was just a good setup. And it meant that if you were in town for the game, particularly, I mean, England have always moved their games around a little bit because the relative size of the country, but particularly if you were in Wales or Scotland, it would be, the Arms Park on Friday night, and then it would be the Millennium Stadium as it was then on the Saturday. And if you were in town for the game, you'd see if you could catch both, because you could normally pick up a ticket to the A game for 15 quid or something. And then it sort of evolved over the years that same system was in place, but it was with the under-20s. So I've always liked that sense of building towards the climax. Maybe it's just that age grade rugby has become so popular that in fact it's the climax now.
Yeah.
Maybe this podcast has completely changed the game.
Maybe
Schedulers knew what was coming.
Maybe. And to be fair, I do think with that, if there's any game that I think is pretty sewn up in terms of a senior perspective, it potentially would be Wales-France. So to have the under-20s on after, you're like, okay, well, maybe let's see what they can do there, because they could be coming off the back of a bit of a hiding in the senior setup.
Well, let's actually sort of as we home in on the games a little bit, let's reverse engineer it, because we're going to be speaking to Mark Mapletoft and Charlie Griffin from the England setup a little later on. So why don't we start on Saturday and work backwards? And that first game, or that last game, but that first game we're going to talk about, France-Wales, which last year was a pretty comprehensive victory for France in what for them was probably, I'm going to say, 26 nations they were a bit disappointed with, finishing behind England and Ireland. They'd have wanted to get a bit more than that, but they, it was a pretty comprehensive victory for the French over Wales. Wales obviously struggling a little bit last year. Do you see something similar this year, or do you think we might get something a little tighter?
Oh, it's going to be difficult to call, because I think, as obviously such as I'm going to point out the opposite with under-20s and age rugby, is that form in previous years doesn't necessarily always translate, because you've got a different squad. That's sort of by the by. So I'm not going to touch upon that too much. But I think this French squad has kind of had a bit of a flourish over the previous 3 years of, well, again, 2 or 3 names every year that were kind of very, very well known. And I think they're kind of coming towards the end of having those sort of star names and characters that are blooded through. Obviously, again, we've spoken about this in previous pods, but it's a lot more difficult to break into the top 14 teams than it is necessarily to break into Premiership teams.
Tell that to Junior Koku.
Well, exactly. That begs the question of what potentially he might be doing if he was at a Premiership club. But again, that's another story. But for people that aren't sort of genetic freaks like Julia Kapoku, it can be quite difficult. And obviously, one of the underdogs of this whole Six Nations, senior, under-20s, whatever, is the Pro de because it seems like more and more players across loads of nations have selected players from from the Scotland in particular. But a lot of the French under-20 side will have also coming from that league as well, which is growing and growing and growing. Look, I do think that they will potentially. Well, I'm going to predict that they will beat Wales. But I think that Wales will be keen to not let that set the tone for their campaign, because I do think that there might be light at the end of the tunnel for the Welsh over the course of the next sort of couple months.
Yeah, and I find the French sort of setup interesting. I mean, they had this boom period that probably lasted 4 or 5 years. You know, a couple of under 20s World Championships. You know, competing right at the top end of the Six Nations, a couple of titles, and I felt like there was a real concerted effort, as you often see in World Cup cycles, to make sure that they had a production line of players coming through for that 2023 Rugby World Cup on home soil. You know, I think that I got the impression that they'd made a concerted effort to change their systems to make sure players were coming through, and I just wonder, and I could be made to eat my words over the course of the next 6-7 weeks. But I do just wonder if maybe with that 2023 World Cup having passed and that focus on, you know, having almost at a governmental level of having a France team that's right at the top end is maybe just sort of drop back a couple of percentage points. And I wonder whether that will have an impact. Hopefully it doesn't. Hopefully the focus is still there and they're still developing guys. But it's just a sort of one of those little thoughts that just percolates in the back of the mind. Did they go all out to try and win that World Cup and have a period where they just really focused on youth and getting guys through? And is it maybe just sort of eased off a little bit? So it'd be interesting to see how that goes.
I definitely think there's a couple names in that French side that, and I'm harping back to the kind of classics that they had with England under-18s, France under-18s a couple of years ago, where I think there was one at Isha where it was mud upon mud, but both sides insisted on still playing running rugby. Like, I think I remember seeing like chip and chases in behind, and then the ball would just like sit dead because it was literally going into water. So that I think two of the names that read out to me back then, someone like Robin Takala, who's been playing a centre, has been actually playing in the top 14 for Vin a lot this season, and as well, I never know how to say his first name, but Zan, I'm going to go with Zan, the Xan, Zan Mosk. Yeah, let's go with that.
Yeah, we'll go with that.
Again, been playing for Bayonne, back three player, has got some Challenge Cup experience, played again a lot top 14 as well. So I say those two were been key parts of the French age grade side for quite a while. I don't know, and you might be able to help me on Posolo Tuolangi. I don't know whether he's in this sort of age group.
He's not in this squad. I think he does still qualify.
Does it?
I need to check. I think he might. Well, I think he's 20. I'll have a look. I'll have a look at that. But yeah, I mean, he was the. Well, in fact, he's another example of one of those guys, isn't he? That last year he was jumping between the two squads a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the guy in this 18 squad that really excites me is Elijah Ibsayen, who's just.
Yeah.
He was. I remember watching him. I think it was summer 2023, France under 18s out in South Africa, and they were getting a hammering from England, and Ibsayen was basically, as much as one can, playing England on his own. It was just unbelievable. Like he was making cover tackles where you just go, do you know what, mate? There's whatever there is 40 on the board now. I save the energy, but he already had that just relentlessness about him that he just refused to give up. He's a guy that excites me, and I remember last year's under 18s Six Nations Festival. It was his sort of last little period of playing, and he was at that age group. He was unbelievable there as well. He's a real one to look out for, and Melvin Rattez on the wing as well is another one that's
Yeah.
come in, and he's exciting. He reminds me a little bit of the sort of old-fashioned French wingers, a sort of Vincent Clerc, a Christophe Dominici kind of guy, where he's sort of small, he looks a bit unassuming. Could see him having a job in an accountancy firm, and then comes out and he's absolutely flying. He's brilliant.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. There are some sort of some sort of gems in this French side that will hopefully make themselves more and more prominent as the campaign goes on.
For sure. And then obviously, we've touched on Wales, but the hope is that they can build through the tournament and have a good one. I mean, yeah, there's some names in that Wales side, to be fair, or that Welsh squad, I should say, that should really excite people. I mean, Aidan Boshoff, Stefan Emmanuel, they are really, really exciting players that people particularly here in England will know well from their time playing school rugby. And Boshoff's been in that 20 squad for a couple of years now.
Yeah, since about 14, yeah.
Yeah. So there's some serious stuff to get excited about in that Wales squad. It's probably just a depth thing for them, but
Yeah.
as you say, anything can happen, and there's certainly some quality in there. Scotland, Italy. Scotland actually were okay in the previous Six Nations. They competed well against the best teams. The one team they didn't compete well against at all was Italy, who gave them a bit of a hammering, if we're honest. We've spoken a little bit about Italy before, about how they've had this real boom period at 20s, and we're starting to see it at the senior level. Guys like Menincello that have come through the system, umpteen back row forwards. Their 20s program has been a real success over the last few years. Potentially might just be hitting the crest of that wave, but some of their results at 20s level have been fantastic, and whereas at the senior end, maybe after last year views have changed a little bit, but at the senior end, sort of Italy are seen as going to be competing at the bottom end. I think at the 20s level, Italy have been seen for a few years now as the side that are most likely to break into the top end.
Yeah, yeah, I agree, and I think that they could give it a good go. I think they're another team that had a lot of players aged sort of 20 to 21 in that previous now that are 2021 in that previous squad. So again, another big cycle of change. But some really exciting names. Obviously, one that springs out to probably many listeners that they'll be listening in because of just our sort of demographic with what we previously cover is whether we're going to see any of Edoardo Dodaro in a Italy under-20 shirt. I don't know what stage he is in terms of injuries and whatnot. But look, if he can get some time on the ball in that spotlight, whether he plays at 13, 15, who knows? He might even run the show at 10. I wouldn't surprise me. That's just kind of the
Could do anything, couldn't he?
Yeah, exactly. That could be really, really exciting to see. So I'd be keen to see him. And Enoch Opoku Gyamfi, obviously part of that Bath setup, I think is been named.
Yeah.
So again, that's another name where will be one to note for our listeners as someone who is taken a different path and has been playing really, really well in Bucks and can potentially translate that onto an international stage.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to get excited about. I mean, as I say, Tadaro, just because we've seen so much of him, and we've sort of, he plays an exciting part of the pitch as well, so it's always exciting. I mean, he's the one that jumps out and just makes me go, oh, I hope they give him a run. I hope he gets an opportunity to show what he's all about. I think he will, because he's a special player, and particularly with an opener against Scotland, who are probably going to be potentially the weakest team in the Six Nations, certainly one of the weaker ones. If you're going to give him a run, you give him a run here and you see how he goes, and then you might give him some more through the rest of the tournament. It'd be awesome to see. Scotland themselves, I mean, we've mentioned Freddy Douglas. The guy I actually want to touch on is Olly Lafferty, tight head prop. If Scotland ever needed someone to play in a position, it is a tight head prop. The depth chart, I mean, the depth chart is narrow enough for Gregor Townsend to actually admit that the depth chart is narrow, which is pretty unusual for a head coach. You've got Xander Fagerson and then guys that don't get a lot of game time at Premiership level, fundamentally. Olly Lafferty could be the next cab off the rank. He was on the bench when they played an under-23 international. He's going to be starting against Italy at tight head. He's a player to look out for, and in many ways, I suppose this is what the Scotland 20s is all about. They're not going to have 15 guys like that England team has got who are all potential professional rugby players, but Scotland's aim has got to be to find guys in positions where you need that depth, who can do the job well. And in Ollie, they've got a guy.
I agree, and look, he's one of those that a couple good performances he could have that immediate call up, which again shows the sort of the gap narrowing between senior and under 20s, purely because they're dire need of sort of a fresher face. But you don't know how that Scotland team will fare on a senior occasion. They've obviously gone for Johnny Fantasy as the captain. So he'll want to lead from the front. I really actually like the inclusion of Charlie Moss, because he's someone that has been on a hell of a rugby journey the last couple of years. Obviously, he was part of that Wasps Academy, wasn't he? And he's now playing his rugby out in Montpellier, and is talk about a shift in culture, going from Montpellier one week to up to Scotland under 20s in the other. But he's always been a kind of nuts and bolts second row that I was really surprised wasn't snapped up a lot earlier, and a lot with a lot more force by a Premiership side, because he's one of those players that does the easy stuff really, really well. And I think Scotland will need those kind of players. And look, they've listed quite a lot of exiles, a lot of players that aren't necessarily playing their rugby at Glasgow, Edinburgh, lot of university players, players that aren't even contracted to professional clubs. They're trying new stuff because it's a blank canvas, and all props to them, because well, one, they need props, and two, it's a different way of looking at things, and I implore that rather than necessarily just picking the best academy players from Edinburgh and Glasgow.
100%. You've got to look as far afield as possible. And the thing I always say about Scotland, and it's true of Wales as well, is there's this perception that they pick a lot of English players or whatever. And the answer a lot of the time to that is that the UK has freedom of movement. Therefore, quite often, Scottish or Welsh people move to London for work, and then they settle in England. So it's not really like they're poaching players from England or trying to cover gaps with English people. They're just Scottish or Welsh people that don't live in Scotland or Wales. There's a real difference between.
Can't help it. Can't
yeah,
help
exactly.
It.
You can't help where your parents find work. Basically,
there's not like different sort of Scottish men hiding in bushes outside of English rugby clubs going, "Oh, do you have a Scottish grandparent?" They're just sort of they just sort of move, and that's okay.
Exactly.
And yeah.
Well, no greater example, I suppose, than Reuben Logan, in that.
Yeah.
People know his story because of who his parents are, but he's quite clearly got a Scottish dad who's come down to London because that's where the jobs were at the time. You know, Wasps. He's got a Welsh mother who's come across because she worked for the BBC, and you know they're based in West London.
Yeah.
You know, and he was through the England setup along the pathway because that was where he was, and doors get closed to you if you take yourself out of that England pathway.
Yeah.
Now he's in the Scotland 20 squad. Scotland haven't poached him.
No.
He's Scottish.
He is Scottish. His name is Reuben Logan. That's quite a Scottish name. Yeah, I agree. And look, Reuben's another one where I think there's so many players in this side that are looking to prove a point, for various different reasons, and that can evoke quite strong and positive emotions going into a tournament such as this, especially when no one's going to be labeling them as keen favourites or anything close to that. So it spells for quite a good sort of a good fixture list if they can get past Italy in this first round. If they lose to Italy in that first round, then potentially that can turn on its head, and then those doubts and frustrations start to creep in, and it could spell for a pretty tricky time.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's Friday night is Scotland against Italy. Thursday night is England against Ireland. I guess before we get into that, we're going to go and speak to some pretty key figures in that England team, in the head coach Mark Mapletoft and the winger Charlie Griffin, who's had his Premiership debut for Bath not too long ago in the Premiership Cup. Right, we're joined by Mark Mapletoft now, head coach of the England under-20s. How are you, Mark?
I'm very well, very prepared, and looking forward to flying over to Ireland later. Boys are in a good place. Yeah, and excited to start the tournament.
Yeah, it's a busy day for you guys. You're flying off to Ireland tonight, or this afternoon rather, and you've got the game on Thursday night. The excitement levels must be pretty high.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, a lot of the lads, have been involved with their club sides, Prem, European stuff. You know, players like Henry have been off with the first team training. Is bringing them back in from lots of different environments. But yeah, it's unusual. Thursday night game isn't something that at this level that you get to do very often. So we've had to adjust our training program this week. And it's been a good challenge for everybody. But yeah, we feel like we've done as much as we can, and the lads have got to we've got to get out there and put their best foot forward, haven't they?
Yeah, Tofty, you spoke about it then that obviously this is a quite unique under-20 side in that you've got so many players in here that have actually had professional experience over the last sort of 18 months. Is that a blessing or a curse for you, especially in the lead up when you've got sort of players dipping in and out, and you're not necessarily confident that you might be able to retain all your players with senior sides calling? Sort of the experience that they would have been gaining away from this group has been invaluable.
Yeah, 100%. And we would fully endorse, all those players playing, or any player having the opportunity to play for their first team, whether that be Prem Cup, Premiership, Europe, because ultimately that's what they're professional players for. That's their bread and butter. That's going to eventually give them the springboard to put their hand up to win multiple caps for their clubs, honours for their clubs, and for the few to go on and represent England. So look, we are 100% behind that, and would never want to even consider preventing people from doing that. The challenge is, as you said, then during a busy season, in a game that just gets more physical every season, how you bring them back together and get the team cohesion that you need to play a team sport that's got 15 players trying to do one thing and 15 players on the opposition try to do something else, or prevent you from doing what you want to do. I think the lucky thing is with those players who've had experience now, a lot of them have been part of this program, well, all of last year. But it's probably the first time since I've been back involved in this that we've actually had players through from under 17s all the way through to this sort of under 20 program. So a lot of these lads toured South Africa together in August 2022. So, and I was part of that coaching group with John Pendlebury. So we've been very fortunate to see. I've been very fortunate to see them all the way through that. And you're not really trying to then instill different behaviours and values, or a different game model or style of play, because they've been exposed to that when they've been in with England for best part of 2.5 years now.
And what's it like? I mean, this group, they've obviously been together a lot, but it's unusual at under 20s level for them to be familiar to so many people. You know, you occasionally have one player that the wider rugby public is aware of, but in this squad, you've probably got getting on for half a dozen that people really do know quite well and have seen a lot in the program. Is it a more, I don't know, is it more challenging to try and manage expectations from the outside, or do you keep it internal? Because obviously with that knowledge comes a bit, or that knowledge from the outside comes a bit of pressure in terms of expectation, or is it just that we just do what we're doing?
Well, you definitely have to do that. I texted a friend this morning who told me he thought it was the best under 20 team he'd ever seen. I said, well, who needs enemies when I've got friends like you? It's the world we live in, Angus, isn't it? Social media, creates things like that. I don't see that as a negative. It is just the way it is, and great credit to people like yourself and Ryan and Alfie, internally with the RFU. We've really done a great job sort of promoting this space. People are genuinely interested. And so look, the players themselves are probably going to become a little bit high profile. I mean, I think maybe there might have been in my day a few people in my town who'd heard of me, but outside of that, by the time I was 19 or 20, other than direct family and friends, I don't think anybody knew who I was.
I was going to say, Mum and Dad were very familiar.
Yeah, they were. Yeah, they were. Yeah, my memory fades anyway. But now, just people far and wide are familiar with who these players are, and that, of course, that brings expectation. But elite sport is heaped with expectation, isn't it? So, are we actually preparing players for that by giving them expectation? I think we are. I think it's part of top level sport, and ultimately, I think those people who survive or get to that top level and then survive are able to take that on board and deal with it. And actually, so if we can expose them just little by little, I don't see that as a bad thing at all. And the players themselves, nobody would have bigger expectations than the players. I don't think I've ever come across any half decent sports person who hasn't backed themselves and who doesn't back themselves to win. Whatever the outside, the public perception is as to who's favourites or who's better than somebody else. I think if you beat them before you get on the court, aren't you? If you've got that attitude.
Sort of honing in on individuals a little bit, but not overly aggressively. Obviously, I mean, the forward pack, lots of people know a lot of the guys in the forward pack, but in a funny sort of way, one of the guys who's probably not so familiar is the skipper, Tom Burrow, who we've seen coming through and is, looks like a very good player, captained at under 19s. He's handed the captaincy on his debut in a very, very experienced pack full of guys with real Premiership experience. Is that a real sort of nod to what you see as his qualities?
Yeah, agreed. Again, Tom would be one of those players who will have been part of this programme for 2.5 years, toured South Africa in that summer with players like Archie McParland, Henry Pollock, Billy Seller. So, look, I don't think that really would faze Tom too much. It's not like he's being asked to lead a group of people he doesn't know or has never met. We thought Tom would be, a potential captaincy candidate. 12 months ago, hence why he was in our EPS squad. It's why he captained the under-19s. I think he's one of a number of high quality players who could do the job this year. And we just felt with the combinations that we have, the players coming back in, and also players who are unavailable, that was the best way for us to move forward with it. And yeah, I've known Tom a long time, great character, no nonsense, but understands that line between, how you lead by doing, but also then how you try and galvanize everybody else. And Tom was very unfortunate. He was actually part of in the end, he was part of the World Cup winning squad out in Cape Town. He actually flew out as an injury replacement. Unfortunately, picked up an illness, and which curtailed his involvement. But he was on the sidelines cheering, and I'm sure that would have, been great motivation for him. I know his family well. Played many times against his dad back in the day in black and white. Yeah, look, I think he'll just relish the opportunity to lead on his debut.
There are many conversations in this team and word on social media, which Angus has said obviously before, pretty unheard of when it comes to under-20s level. But one of them is at blindside flanker Junior Koku, obviously a brilliant talent, and has applied a lot of his trade in the second row. But it seems to be a bit of an England trait, especially in the senior side, to have a lock or at least a decent line-out jumper at 6. Is that something that potentially you've been having conversations with Steve Borthwick about, that you want to kind of mirror that, or is that completely your sort of aim and objectives heading into Ireland?
Yeah. No, look, Steve, we had some great conversations with Steve. Myself and a lot of the support staff are involved with the England A game. We've got a great conduit to Steve through Connor. Steve's very busy. Steve doesn't insist on us doing anything specific. But look, there's obviously always sort of dialogue around, who we potentially feel could be accelerated through and play. Junior's a unique situation. He's been part of the age group program now from his time at Saracens through to Exeter, over to Racing. Now, we all know the regulations around senior players, having to play in the Premiership rather than being playing abroad. But we've maintained Junior as part of our junior program simply because he's been in it, from word go. And look, he's played second row for Racing. He's played in the back row at 6 for Racing, which is no mean feat for a youngster of 19. And look, he keeps progressing. He's got a bright future. Ticks a lot of boxes in terms of what a modern day Test player looks like. But over the next few years, there'll be a lot of people trying to compete with him for positions, both at club, in France and internationally as well. So look, I think at the minute, look, Junior's a great character. I think all the lads will tell you this. He's got great energy. He's got his own ways of doing things, but he's an integral part of our group and has been really for the last couple of years. And he adds a lot of value to us. And of course, we're always trying to manage. Again, it's a physical game. He plays in a position with a lot of physical requirements, and we've got to remember this kid is only 19. And actually, I think we've along with Racing, tried to manage him well over the last 12 months just to make sure that this guy is still performing when he's 34, like he is now that he's not at 19.
He's obviously alongside Henry Pollock in that either side of the scrum. He's had a pretty whirlwind sort of fortnight, I guess. Obviously, you must have had relatively limited time with him, but you know the credibility and exactly where he stands. But putting yourself in his shoes for a bit, sort of, what do you think it's been like for Henry over the last sort of couple of weeks?
Yes, as you rightly say, probably a bit of a whirlwind, probably unexpected, but maybe secretly, who's hoping some opportunities might come his way. I mean, you never wish injuries on any player, but those injuries have probably opened up opportunities alongside what have been some pretty standout performances for Northampton in domestically and in Europe. And ultimately, as you said, our job, yes, is to put out players and allow them to perform for England under 20s, but it's also just to add to the development alongside, what they're doing in their club. And you certainly can't argue that he hasn't deserved the call-ups that he has. And as we said to him, when we came back in at the beginning of the week, this is now then just another opportunity for him to put his hand up, for selection for the seniors. Because, if he comes in and knocks it out the park and takes on board those messages that I'm sure Steve and the coaching team and the seniors have talked to him about, then, it's like, wow, this kid is able to just, come back into the under-20s where he's familiar with peers that he's achieved success with, and he's actually been able to continue that development piece. And then, of course, we have to manage that alongside his club commitments. Northampton are going to be fighting both domestically and in Europe once the Six Nations finishes. And again, be mindful that, at 20 years old, again, we can't be asking these lads to be playing every single week. So, we'll work with Northampton and the seniors to make sure that, he plays the right amount of game time at this level as well, so that he's not burning out at a young age. That's critical for us. And we try and work as closely as we can with everybody to ensure that that's the case. But look, Henry's a brilliant character, been around the programme for probably as long as I have. And he's got some great friends here. He's a great leader. And we're just looking forward to seeing, if he can translate that club form into Thursday night.
Just sort of thinking on Henry having, I suppose he's a bit of a special case in that clearly he's a very special player, but looking at the amount of Premiership experience, is that one of the sort of, in the team overall, is that one of the sort of weird benefits for you guys as a 20s programme of the fact that the Premiership's now 10 teams, lower salary cap, there's perhaps a couple more opportunities for the younger guys?
I think there is at the minute, Angus. I'd be interested to see how that tracks for the next couple of years, because you can't just keep blooding young players. There's only so many young players that can play in those games. We all know how physical the Premiership is, and it's fast as well. We're probably not as, we've probably not been as competitive in European terms over the last 2 or 3 years as we would like to have done. But there's no doubt that the Premiership product is a good one. But as I said, clubs are not going to be playing 6, 8, 10 youngsters in a match day squad. So eventually those sort of rosters are going to get full up. So then it flips back to then the pathway, the clubs, academies and us, is to work then together to say, well, actually, look, if we've already filled some of those spots with some outstanding players, how good are you going to have to be to now get in?
Yeah, the challenge is going to start getting pretty big, isn't it?
It is, yeah, and that's something I think we've acknowledged internally, and again, always, it gets a little bit frustrating when you kind of always hear about this sort of club v country discussion, and we work so closely in collaboration with the club academies around how players are developed and what we're looking for, because ultimately the clubs have got their own sort of game models, they've got their own ways of doing things, styles, philosophies, but ultimately the international game is very different to the club game. Fundamentally, it's very different. We'd love to think it's the same. And does it stop players transitioning from one to the other? Clearly not. But it is very different. And therefore, if our job as England pathway coaches is to produce and prepare players to play in a world leading England team, that's what it is. Well, then the club's job, whilst they would want their players, I'm sure, to represent their countries, ultimately their job is to prepare their players to play in the Premiership for that club. Yeah. So whilst there will be some similarities, there'll be some fundamental differences. So then we have to work closely with them across the board, because no one's got a bottomless pit of money, and so the two can work together to say, right, how do we identify these players? Because talent ID and talent development are fundamentally interlinked, but they are very different. And then we need to look at, okay, well, what does the game look like? Because if we're picking up 16, 17-year-olds in our club programs and then our England programs, well, by the time they're ready to play Premiership or international rugby, that's probably 5 years away. I guarantee you the game was different 5 years ago than what it is now. The laws change all the time, or they get interpreted all the time. Suddenly, aerial skills have become a massive thing. Well, aerial skills were a big thing 5 years ago, but they're even more prevalent now. So we then have to try and sort of future-proof the development piece because of where the game might move. Let's be honest, no team sport gets slower and smaller, does it?
Yeah.
No team gets slower. No team sport gets slower and smaller. Look at all the world's best team sports. It's faster, more powerful, bigger.
Yeah, and then I suppose everything else is just tweaks from there, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
who would have thought the role of the winger would have changed so much in the last, 10, 15 years? It's unbelievable.
I thought you were going to go to wingers throwing into lineouts in the 70s.
Hey, well, I've brought this up with you before, and hey,
I know.
Razzie Erasmus has started doing it.
It's when they used to throw it in like a bomb, didn't they? Brilliant.
Yeah, when you watch back that Barbarians against the All Blacks game from way back when, and the greatest game ever, and suddenly you see wingers lobbing it like a grenade into the line-out.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah.
Gareth Edwards, was that my wedding? There you go.
Was
Wow.
he? There's a claim to fame.
Unbelievable, yeah. Family, very good friend of my mother-in-law.
Oh, well, there we go. Yeah.
There you go.
That's
I'm absolutely stumped by that.
Well, that was great. All I need now is DuPont to come to something.
Yeah. Exactly. And then you'll complete the set. Final one from me was a really interesting bit of terminology that we saw in a press release that was put out a couple of weeks ago when you referred to Arch McParland and Junior Koku joining the Brotherhood that you've got here in the squad. I want to touch upon it because it does seem from the outside in, this is an incredibly tight-knit group. And as you've said, a lot of them have been with each other for the last 2.5 years. What are the kind of benefits of that, and how are you looking to apply that close unity onto the pitch ahead of Thursday?
Yeah, look, it's evolved. It's been spoken about a lot, hasn't it? It's got its roots probably even way back before these lads came together through the under-17 program, and it sort of started off probably a little bit with JP and I in the under-18s back in Six Nations I think it was in 2022. We kind of started off a principle of that, and it's really to reflect kind of the behaviours that we would expect to see. I think people, organisations are very good at talking about values like words, honesty, discipline, respect, all of that. But actually, they're just words. They have to be actions. So we talk a lot about making those words just things you do on a daily basis. So they're not things you consciously do. You do it because you know that it's just subconscious. It's kind of unconscious competence, isn't it? So we drive that, but it gets to a point then where it can't just be the staff or the coaches talking about it. It has to be driven by the players. So we put, again, probably gone on record a number of times saying this, is then the onus is then put on the players to deal with things. Now, that's easier said than done. And I'm sure, a lot of teams say, it's all driven by the players. But, I think it genuinely is in here. And therefore being able to integrate leaders who are perhaps going to be around next year to get to see what that looks like, to have a taste of it. But it's also then how you get that sort of fun and enjoyment off the pitch. I mean, we've got some brilliant staff here who've got some great ideas about things. I mean, I was literally laughing out loud last night. We had a bit of a sort of a staff and players fun night around an old school 70s TV show. And honestly, the lads just bought into it. It's so funny. I was literally in hysterics at the back of the room, and things like that. You sometimes are what's the word I'm looking for? They're undervalued. That time that you come in and spend with each other, and then again, that little story I shared. I think there was a bit of an altercation between a couple of players out in the World Cup last year. I mean, honestly, I didn't hear anything about it for about 2 weeks. And it got brought up in a leaders' meeting. And I said to Finn at the time, Cap Carnduff, I said, mate, is there anything you need me to do? And he went, no, all sorted. And that was it. I was like, right, all good, next job. And you kind of know that you've got to the place you want to be when you hear of things like that, because it's been so easy for me or members of staff to have, intervened, had a word with the couple, but actually the players have dealt with it internally. Now, every year in this space, it's challenging because there are new people, there are new dynamics. There's often a slightly different leadership group. There's different characters, and actually how quickly you get those on board can often dictate, I think, how hard the players are willing to work for each other. So look, it can be a bit cheesy, kind of a bit cliche, but I whatever it is, I really like the concept because the principles that underpin it are good ones, and allow people to come in and say, hey, do you know what? I love this environment. It's high performing, it's focused, but bloody hell, it's fun to be in.
Definitely. Right, very last question, because I know you've got to go and get on the plane. 32 all draw last year, denied the Grand Slam by it. I know it's a different group, as you've said, but you boys must be determined.
Well, I think if you're not determined, you're probably in the wrong place, aren't you? It's an interesting challenge this year, isn't it? We've had some unbelievable battles against Ireland and France, certainly in the time that I've been involved, which was the 23 World Cup, last year's Six Nations and World Cup, and we've played them in all three tournaments, which again is quite unusual. Yes, I mean, we even drew, didn't we, out in Cape Town in 2023, then drew again. We got on the right side of them in Cape Town this year, 2024. So yeah, you just don't know, do you? You just never know, because the first game, second game, everything's a little bit new. What you can guarantee with Ireland is they'll be really well coached. They're smart. You know what's coming. The template from sort of under 18s to under 20s to Leinster to Ireland, it's pretty much the same. There's not a huge amount of deviation, and I think great for the lads to be able to see the comparisons and look and say, okay, well, how did teams shut that down? You're away from home. It's been a while since I've been to Cork, but I would imagine 10 or 12,000 people, mostly anti-English, if not all, bar family. And it's the first game, and people are going to be nervous. Nerves are a good part of high performance sport. So you just never know. But yeah, look, really excited. Think the guys are prepped as well as we can. We've got an exciting new coaching group, an exciting new group of players. Yeah, and just can't wait to get started. That's why the program exists, to provide these young lads with experiences like that, and hopefully if they can all go on, or some of them will certainly go on and represent the senior team together, they'll look back and remember things like winning the Six Nations, winning the World Cups, going to Ireland and hopefully winning, and they won't then fear having to do that at the next level.
Well, thank you very much. As you say, let's hope tomorrow night is a night to remember, and I'm looking forward to seeing Charlie Griffin and Jack Bracken throwing into the line-out. So it'd be a good one.
You'll be waiting a while.
Give them a go. Go on. All right. Cheers, Mark. Appreciate it.
Take care. Thank you both.
Right. We're joined now by Charlie Griffin, Bath winger, starting for England under 20s against Ireland. How are you, Charlie?
Yeah, not too bad. Thanks. Not too bad. Just woken up, had some breakfast, ready to fly this morning to Ireland. So that's all good.
Is it feeling like a bit of a whirlwind? Gone from Bath into camp and international rugby? Here we go.
Yeah, no, it's all going pretty quickly. We're all very excited. Ready to get going, really. Can't wait to play a long string of matches as well, because obviously I haven't played too much. But yeah, very excited.
I've just spoken to your head coach about the possibility of you throwing into the lineouts. Do you fancy it?
Probably not. No, I mean I've been told I might need to go in a scrum at one point, but nah. Lineouts, it's a bit difficult to be honest. Don't really fancy that.
Are you the yellow card cover if there's an injury, get on the flank?
Yeah, I've just been told yesterday that I am. Yeah, got into number 6. If we get yellow cards, that'll be good fun. Yeah.
It's just push, isn't it? It's just push. I think
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know what they all complain about.
Yeah, exactly.
just don't do what Johnny May did a few years back.
Yeah. Griff, obviously a really exciting time for you, and a pretty special sort of squad that we've just been speaking to Mark about, in that a lot of you guys have obviously ticked boxes of Prem Cup, Premiership, some even sort of have got towards Champions Cup sort of levels. But a lot of you, including yourself, making that under-20s debut this weekend. How does that differ from what you've already experienced so far in terms of firsts this year with Bath, and how excited are you to not only make your debut but to make it away in Ireland? Is a pretty exciting experience.
Yeah, and obviously huge occasion away in Ireland. In the evening as well. I mean, it'll be really cool. Really excited, and massive honor as well, especially with, as you said, some of the players in the team with me. And in terms of how it differs, I'd say they're both sort of very, very big, but very different in their own respects. Like in sort of Prem Cup, that's you're playing with people a lot older than you. Like so it's a lot different. But I mean, it's more men's rugby. This is sort of growing up playing. Like we've played with these people for the last few years, but you only come in and out with them, and I think that's really special because you're with them for a short amount of time, but like a long time when you're with them. So you sort of great connections, and it's a really strong team, and it will be very, very exciting, and Ireland should be very good as well.
How difficult is it necessarily to prep for a Thursday evening game? I mean, obviously you've played a lot of bucks this year, so you may be used to sort of a midweek evening and sort of chucking a ball around on a Wednesday night. But as a group, obviously you usually ramp up towards the weekend, and you've had a lot of people sort of dipping in and out, as is the success of this team so far. How difficult has it been to sort of time momentum right into a Thursday evening?
Yeah, no, so it was a bit weird, obviously, because we because the game on the Thursday is sort of like a 5-day week, so we all came in on the Sunday and had our main training session on the Sunday, which a lot of people are saying we haven't done since, I don't know, minis rugby for our club on a Sunday morning. But no, it's to be honest, like when you're in here, kind of you don't really like the days sort of. It's not really like a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. It's sort of just like our day on, day off, pre-match day, match day, whatever it is. So, but it's been not too hard actually, because you time it right with your clubs. Like we had a day off before we came in when other people at our clubs were training, so just to sort of prepare us to come in best shape possible. But it's not been too bad actually. Yeah,
that's awesome. And
yeah.
Obviously, Will mentioned like some of the experience in this squad that you play alongside. Does that give you a sense of sort of kind of collective confidence that you've got? Henry, who's been absolutely flying for Saints. You've got Junior, who's been flying for Racing. A load of guys in there that have got good Premiership experience. Angus Hall and Archie McParland in the backs with you. Is there a sense of collective confidence just because you've seen so many of this group get a lot of experience already under their belt?
Yeah, 100%. I think you especially sort of see it like off the pitch as well. Like when you're in and around meetings and around like team huddles, how they can sort of like their leadership abilities. I think come through especially, and I think that really helps, gives confidence to the team. Sort of if all else fails, then we have things to fall back on. We have someone just go back to the simples, and I think if everyone does their like those people do just an all right job, then we can fall back on sort of safe options, and then we should be all fine. But yeah, no, really helpful having them in, especially someone like Henry who's just come back from the England squad. There's heaps of learnings there from him, probably that can transfer over to us and be a massive help to the team.
And on a personal level, it must excite you as well, seeing your teammates, in all those positions that have done what we've just been talking about. It must make you think, wow, like we're actually really close.
Yeah,
You
no,
know,
100%.
a good 6 months, and who knows?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, it sort of makes you realize how you may not be too far away. Like you always get told it like it's just one or two injuries and then you could be in and then it's your chance. But yeah, no, seeing people do it our age grade, our level is really exciting. I think motivates a lot of people to sort of you know show them that they're not too far away.
Right, we're going to change tack a little bit here, and we're going to rewind 12 months because we're not just talking about the England under 20s this week. Will and I have got loads to talk about, including Schools Cup, Continental Tire Schools Cup. This time last year, you were getting ready. I guess you were getting yourselves prepped for semi-final time
Yeah,
with Harrow. Obviously, your England teammate, England under 20s teammate Koku was the captain of that Harrow team as well. He went down around this time,
yeah.
and suddenly that was your one of your big names gone. But the boys went and got the job done. Tell me a bit about that experience. It was, I'm assuming that was probably your first game at Twickenham. That final, what was that like?
Yeah, well, actually, funnily enough, we had our rugby club back it was like under eights or under sevens or something like that. Had it won some little tournament and managed to go on a half time touch game at Twickenham. So but that was quite funny. But
Well, you were an old hat then by the time
yeah,
you got there.
exactly, yeah. But no, it was yeah, this was the time around Academy League as well. So we had quite a few boys playing, for obviously London South Central, and then me at Saracens, and our coach James Melville was sort of just texting us right after every game. Who's injured? Who's injured? Are you okay? Are you okay? And I remember like after, because obviously finals day was streamed, he said on the group chat we'd sort of won our. It looked like we'd won our game sort of 20 minutes or 15 minutes before the end of the game. He was going to like take him off, just so we don't get any more injuries. But no, we did actually get a couple injuries as well in that. We had like Reggie Hammock and Philip Edstrom for London South Central all got injured for like a couple of games and then everyone sort of managed to get back just in time in the semi-finals. But no, that was a weird time, yeah, sort of Academy League, and then we'd train on like a Tuesday, Thursday evening after like football and everything else, so we could get everyone to train. But no, everyone obviously was really excited to be there. So everyone bought in, and it was obviously went very well.
Very well. You had a starring role in the final. Another guy actually who had a starring role in the final was Reggie, as you mentioned there. Tell me a little bit about him because he's obviously part of this wider 20s group. But this time last year, he was without a senior contract, sort of sniffing around, wondering what he might do. Was he going to go to uni? Was he going to do something else? What's happening? I mean,
Yeah.
his rise in the last 12 months is incredible.
No, it's been well. I mean, personally, I think, and everyone at Harrow always thought he was an unbelievable player and probably didn't get given the opportunities that he maybe deserved. I think, like he's always been outstanding, and sort of everyone, like we say, it was like sniffing around for a contract, not knowing what he was doing. But I think everyone sort of backed him. That at some point, people would sort of realise and see how good of a player he is, and obviously that's shone through, and he's got his opportunity at Saracens, and he's well, from what I've been hearing, what he's been saying, he's been doing unreal, and obviously got a chance in Prem Cup. So yeah, really happy for him.
No, it was a special time, and obviously the team are. Well, I don't even know if you know. I presume you've been keeping up with it, but they're back in the semi-finals
Well,
this year.
my little brother's actually in the team as well this year, so that's fine.
Well, there we go.
Keep a close eye.
Exactly. Backing them to go back to back, do the double, join the greats.
Well, we've got to, yeah, obviously. I think a big game against semi-finals against RGS. I think it was. Yeah, no, I've been hearing that they're quite good, but I think once I think we've got a good shot, very good team this year as well. So, yeah.
Does it feel a bit funny to think that was a year ago? I mean, a lot of people say a lot can happen in a year, but you've had a lot happen. I mean, on a personal note for you, you've obviously gone from that London Irish setup. You spent sort of a whirlwind sort of time with Saracens in there to under 18s, then picked up by Bath, then you've been Bucks, Prem Cup, and then on to England under 20s. Like that as a block of 12 months, when you sort of sit back and maybe probably now matchday -1 isn't potentially the time to reflect on things as wide as this, but sort of if you can give it a moment, just sort of what are your immediate emotions when you think about the last 12 months?
Yeah, no, I mean, so much has happened. It's been unbelievable, but like great experience with all of it. But no, I think in terms of thinking back to 12 months ago with that schools cup, I mean, it was probably, to be honest, probably my favourite moment in the last 12 months still, I'd say. Just because, all the schoolmates, everyone there in front of the whole school was an unbelievable moment. But no, it's been crazy. Yeah, no, so much has happened, but very grateful for all of it, and it's been massive help.
You can tell us now, actually, I've just realised, because you're not schoolboy anymore. How did you guys celebrate?
Well, after the semi-final, it was actually one of our good mates' birthday parties right afterwards, so that was a good sort of segue in. And then we had a couple of weeks, and then it was the Twickenham, and then it was actually in the middle of our mocks week. So I had a maths exam at like 2 p.m. or something the next day, I think. But we were allowed to, stay the night at home, and then everyone sort of, I think it ended up being my house actually. A lot of people came back to my house for afterwards.
You think?
No, sorry, they did all come back to my house. So that was a very, very, very fun night. Celebrate properly. And the week after that was actually a rugby dinner, and so that was another great sort of celebration of all things. That was right after Roslyn Park as well. So yeah.
Oh, well, I'm glad you got to celebrate. And yeah, I mean, it's all coming back. That Roslyn Park run. I mean, so close to the double. I mean, that was, for anyone that doesn't know, that was one of the most brutal games of sevens. That final, I think I've ever seen. Have you ever played in anything like that?
No, I mean, I was absolutely battered. I was, because we only really had like, I think because we were focused on the cup completely, and then sort of just a couple of training sessions the week after, straight into Roslyn Park. And I think we did so well because everyone was just sort of enjoying their rugby after on such a high. And I was sort of just playing what we can, and then we managed to get to the final, which wasn't, the goal was just get as far as we can, and got to the final. I think it was just crazy. I can't. It feels like it was like difficult to remember the actual game because it's sort of just so much going on.
Oh, it was brutal.
Exactly.
Conditions like no other. It was unbelievable.
Yeah.
I mean, fast forwarding now to present day, and we'll mention a little bit about this squad that you're with at the moment, and obviously the team's been named to play Ireland, and you're sort of the outside backs, as it were. 13 onwards have all sort of spent a majority of their time on the wing, and the pace between you four is pretty blistering. You all therefore have quite a good levels of empathy for positionally across the pitch. I can imagine that the combinations will be running strong, but as a little four, I'm going to compact you into a quartet. I don't know, obviously, if that's necessarily the case game plan wise, but as a four, kind of how excited are you to play with Jack and Angus and get your sort of under-20s campaigns going?
Yeah, no, really excited. Obviously, I played with Jack, Bracken, and Angus a few times with Saracens and England 18s, so know all about that, and that's obviously, I love playing with them. Really exciting. And Jack Kinder, I've just obviously played last couple of games with him, and he's an unbelievable player as well. So I think in training it all feels, because obviously Jack Bracken plays with Jack Kinder as well, so there's a load of combinations, and then Bracken's also with Angus, and then so everyone's sort of been together at some point, and it seems to click really well, and really enjoying it with all of them four. So yeah.
And, yeah, in terms of the guys in front of you as well, we've just been speaking to Mark about them. In terms of a forward pack, it's always quite nice as a winger, back three player, to know that potentially you've got some sort of bigger lads ahead of you that can potentially muscle up and get you some front foot ball. Is this one of the most dominating, biggest sort of packs that you've ever had sort of the pleasure of playing with? Because some of the boys, not necessarily just in that starting 8, but to come off the bench and also in the wider squad. I mean, the sort of genetic possibility across that forward pack is pretty special.
Yeah, no, I mean 100%. I mean, even if you compare it to, like, I don't know, playing Prem Cup with Bath, I mean, despite the fact this is under 20 team. I mean, size wise, I think they definitely match up pretty well. But no, it gives you huge confidence because obviously, you know, playing with, you know, dominant carries and those forwards up front obviously give us, you know, good quick ball and make our jobs a lot easier, especially on the wing. You know, give us more space, give us more time on the ball, and that's exactly what we want. So, you know, it gives me huge confidence having them up front with the likes of, you know, Mide, Junior, Henry, Kepu, Billy. I mean, there's like loads. Yeah.
Final question then, Charlie, because I know that in 2 minutes you've got to get yourself on a plane, basically. Speed, attachment, space, that's the big theme from the 18s group all the way through the pathway. For you, I'm assuming that's an absolute godsend because speed, attachment, space to me sounds a lot like get the wingers the ball.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, you can sort of see it in straight away in our first game. They just want us to play. I mean, get the ball to space as quickly as possible, and play with speed, which is obviously just playing on top and often gets it to the edges if you're not going through the middle, which gets it into our hands, which is, I mean, such like an exciting, fun brand of rugby to play. And I love it personally. I mean, just playing the last 2 games, because obviously I haven't played a match or last time we played England 18s, which was almost a year ago, and sort of remember how fun it is, how good sort of style we like to play here. And they really sort of, the coach tried to promote it. It's all about being powerful, playing to space, being quick. No, really good.
Fantastic. Well, good luck on Thursday night. It should be an awesome experience. And if you do find yourself on the flank, as Will says, just lean and push. You'll be absolutely fine.
Exactly. Can't be that hard, can it? Yeah.
Some of the people they let play, though, you'll be absolutely fine, mate. Trust me.
Oh, thank you very much. Cheers.
Right, cheers, Charlie. Appreciate your time.
Cheers. Bye.
So good to hear from Mark and from Charlie. And Will, the sense I get from both of them, I mean, Mark a little bit more coy, doesn't want to talk too much about individuals, as you can understand. But the impression I get is that there is real excitement about this group.
Rightly so. And I think this is certainly the beginning of a new cycle for them, and a really exciting one at that. I mean, something we didn't kind of mention in the interviews, but it is something we've mentioned previously on pods, is this is probably the most experienced side, in that so many of them are getting their first caps for England under-20s, but are some of the most experienced under-20s players in the tournament. That doesn't make sense, but you know, you can get where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
And
experienced professionals, but not experienced at under-20s international rugby.
Yeah, and I do think that there's going to be some translation issues. So I wouldn't necessarily guarantee that just because a player's done really well in the Prem or really well in the Champions Cup, that means automatically they're going to absolutely walk it in the under-20s, because international rugby, no matter what age grade you're playing it at, is a different beast. And look, it's not going to necessarily be easy, but I think from the positive vibes that we're getting, they're pretty confident, and win, lose or draw, they're a great group. Like we've been so lucky to be around them. We mentioned obviously at the top of the show, we've been so lucky that we've been given so much access to them over the last couple sort of months, years, whatever, and we've been able to see this group come through. And they are a brilliant group, and that kind of implores us even more. As I know, like, you're not necessarily the biggest English fan with your Scottish blood, but still, it implores us to cheer these guys on, because they're a great group of rugby players and people.
Yeah, they're an unbelievable group, and there is something very special. Might be a Scotland fan, but sat, immersed in the English system as I am. Seeing these guys come through and have success is really what it's all about. There's the whole purpose of Next Gen 15 really as a whole is to sort of see young players, shine a light on what's happening, and right across the board, from the guys that will make it to the guys that school is as good as it gets for them. But when you see these guys making this journey, and particularly someone like a Pollock, who's almost already completed the journey and he's only 20, is very special to see, and what it's all about. I mean, I was I was tempted to get into this with Mark Mapletoft, because he did mention that a mate of his had messaged him and said that this was the best under-20s group he'd seen for England. And I was going to get into it, and then I thought, nah, well, you and I can chat about this. I think it might be.
Yeah.
So the 20s programme, I think it was 2008 or 2009, it switched from under-21s to under-20s. The only team I can think of that maybe competes with this one is the one that you quite often see, the famous team sheet flying around, where England played New Zealand in I think it was 2011 Junior World Championships, as it was back then, the World Under-20s now. And that's the only team I think that could be better than this one. I guess the proof is in the pudding in terms of how many people progress from that. We don't yet know from this team who's progressed from that. But, I mean, it was, Ford, Farrell, Daly, I think, Jonathan. I mean, they were backline heavy. I suppose the difference is with this team, it's forward pack heavy. But I mean, you look at what they've done already, and you kind of go, well, you've got in Pollock, McParland, Koku, you've got three guys that are first team regulars at Premiership level already. In Angus Hall, you've got a guy who straight out of school is sort of a regular in the 23 for Saracens, you'd have to say. Kepu is Kepu. I mean, if Kepu doesn't go all the way, then something's gone wrong.
Yeah.
You've got Billy Seller at tight head, who's been playing Premiership rugby for Bath. Ty Raymond, who's replacing him, came on for sale against Billy Seller last week. There's a lot of depth there. Sadeki is obviously play Premiership rugby with Bath. Tom Burrows made his Sale debut, and as we spoke to Mark about, he's the captain, and they've earmarked him for that for what sounded like a couple of years now. So you're looking at that and going, well, given that some of them have already kind of made a lot of the leap, and they're surrounded by guys that are very much their equals in terms of expectation, this feels like it might well be the best squad I've seen at England under-20s level.
I think what makes it the best squad is that strength and depth. That like you've got players coming on for players that are seasoned, sort of age grade international players, which is a bit of a ridiculous term because you can only play it for a couple of years. But like some of the most capped players in that squad aren't in the starting 15. Like Josh Bellamy, for example, has got 11, 12 caps for England 20s. And is on the bench. Like it is that strength and depth. Look, you say you can hark back to that 2011 team, maybe that 2016 team, where it had like Max Malins, Harry Mallender, Jack Willis, Harry Randall, Ollie Thorley, Joe Marchant, like that again. Half dozen names, but not like players on the bench that, or not even in the squad, that were still having Premiership minutes at the time. Yeah, like I think it's always good. You can usually predict how good an England under-20s team is in hindsight by going, oh well, he's gone on to do X, Y, Z. It's very rare that you can say this is a very good England under-20s team now because they have the experience now, regardless of what. Oh, I think they'll be a great player in the future. We're saying, oh, he is a great player, and he's proved it in Europe. And now he's playing for England under-20s. That's the difference, is that we can state that with players now, as opposed to predicting, oh, I think they're going to be great, therefore this is a great England under-20s team. Yeah,
exactly. And Tofty was trying to be fair, actually, was reasonably open about the fact that there's some good players there and a good group of leaders, etc. But obviously is not wanting to get too far down the line of throwing praise at them, but acknowledging that that's been happening and that people have been praising them, and that is a good thing. And actually, if we extrapolate a little bit from that, it's a good thing for the game. Yeah, we see everywhere people talking about how rugby needs superstars. It needs to embrace the fact that we live in an era of the personality, and that if we want to attract people to the game, we need to have some people to attract them to it. And well, having some superstars at the age of 18, 19, 20 who you can stick with for the next 10, 15 years is a pretty good way of going about that. And this squad has got plenty of them. I want to touch a little bit on what Charlie Griffin was saying as well. I mean, noting that it's an easy environment to come into because you have these guys, with stepping up as leaders. And he said, if he can't sit and listen to Henry Pollock and take something on from how much he's done over the last 12 months or so, then what's he doing, kind of thing. It surely is going to sort of allow the other group of players, the ones that maybe haven't got as much experience yet, it's only going to accelerate their progress as well, being surrounded by guys who are their peers that have had all this.
I agree, and it's not only. I think it can kind of work both ways, because you've got so many players that have had, and I don't think there's any rugby journey that's straightforward, but someone like Henry Pollock has had a pretty straightforward, stereotypical, almost fairy tale run through academy, really good at under 18s, and you play for your country at England under 18s. Then you play in the Prem Cup while he's still at school, which has only happened a handful of times. And then you go and play Northampton Saints, you make your debut, England under 20s, then you're a regular, then you're playing in Europe, then you're onto a senior call-up. Like, in terms of a linear run, that's as pretty straightforward as it goes. So yes, you can take a lot from that. But I think also these players can take a lot from players like Ollie Scholar, Reggie Hammock. Charlie is one of them, a player that's already been at 3 Premiership clubs in the space of, obviously still only being 18, 19. There's a few other players. Tom Burrow is one as well. Their captain. He was part of the Yorkshire Rugby Academy and had no necessary direction after that, and had to fight his way to find a contract at Sale. There's a lot of hardship as well in and around the success, which when it gets tough, which I imagine it will do on Thursday night, maybe they're the kind of players that they might turn to and say, okay, well, how do we get ourselves out of these predicaments? Because you guys have been there, done that, in terms of not necessarily having it straightforward. And I think that combination of having players that have been destined since day one and players that have had to find the back door, that it spells for not only unity on and off the pitch, but a real success.
Absolutely, and you're right there actually to mention the Yorkshire Academy. I mean, what a huge achievement from them, because having a 20s captain is fantastic for them. So I'm absolutely delighted for them. But yeah, Thursday, big night. Shall we do some quick fire predictions?
Go on then.
Well, let's, now that we've had a brief look at all the games, let's go in sort of linear order.
Yeah.
Ireland, England, 32 all last year, as Tofty said. They've met time and time again over the course of the last 12 months. But new groups, where do you see it?
I think it is going to be an England win for me. I think that this Ireland under-20s team, obviously it's such a contrast to this England side. I've mentioned this before, so I'm not gonna labour the point. But like, there are 4 teams represented in the team for Ireland this weekend in the 23. And one of those teams, Connacht, only has 3 representatives. So realistically, 20 players come from just 3 clubs. Yeah. So that, in terms of the comparison with the England under-20s team, some of them weren't even in camp this week and are starting. Whereas these Ireland under-20s boys have been with each other for quite a while. So I think that's their strength, but I think England will come away with a win and kind of dispel the idea that Ireland may continue to be their sort of bogey team that they can't really get over the line with.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I mean, Ireland are going to be very good. Ireland are just very good. and they have this incredible system right through from school to 18s to provincial level to 20s to top end provincial level, and then into the senior team, where it's almost drag and drop, and you can just place players in and they know their role. They almost don't need to train the role. They've practiced it since they were 10 years old. They know what they're doing. And that's a difficult thing to come up against, because in the sort of age grade levels, that is pretty unusual to have that level of cohesion that Ireland will have and always do have. But at this stage, it's hard to look past that, just the sheer quality of that England side. So I think I'd agree with you on that. Friday night, Scotland host Italy.
Italy. Is this the toughest game to call?
Yeah, potentially. I mean, can Scotland? I mean, Scotland are going to be. I mean, as Tofty said, everyone's determined, aren't they? That's the whole point. But Scotland are going to be surely doubly determined, in that there's a chip on the shoulder about, they've been getting a real hammering for the performances of the 20s over the last however many years. So they're going to want to come out and prove a point. They've got some guys who are prove a point kind of players. A Freddy Douglas, a Ruben Logan, guys like that who just want to. They really do want to front up. They're kind of that is what their game is. So I think that I still probably lean Italy, but I don't think we're going to see a repeat of what we saw last year. I don't think it's good. I think it was 47-12 or something like that last year. I don't think we're going to see that. I think it's going to be a much tighter game. And a much tighter game will represent huge improvement for Scotland, and if Italy will be happy to come away with a victory should it go that way.
Okay, well, in that case, to make things interesting, I'll say Scotland, and this will be the first upset of a pretty, I was about to say upsetting Six Nations, so that makes it sound quite negative. But as in, I think there might be quite a few surprises. And look, this podcast is supposed to be interesting, and let's make it that. And I'll say that I think Scotland might surprise people and sort of state their intent with a win over an Italy team that will be bamboozled by the brutality of the Scots. That's how I'll phrase it.
You're about to learn. All the listeners are about to learn that someone who supports Scotland can simply never back Scotland to win in any fixture in any sport. It's just ingrained in the psyche that you just assume that it's going to be dark and depressing.
Yeah.
That way, you can only ever be pleasantly surprised, because it either happens as you've expected, or they do better.
Exactly. It's a win-win for you really now, because you can either come on next week and be all smug and be like, yeah, well, I told you so, Italy are a good side, or you can come on and go, yeah, brilliant. I'm so glad for my Scottish Warriors. I'll be there next week wearing my kilt. So
exactly.
you can play it both ways. It's genius.
And then the cycle starts again, on a weekly basis. We finish off then with France against Wales on the Saturday, the unusual Saturday fixture. I can't see past a France win, but having refreshed myself with that Welsh squad, it's a lot better than I had thinking in the back of my mind. I think this is going to be a lot tighter than we've talked up. I think France will win, but I don't think this is going to be a runaway train like it was a bit last year. I think this is going to be a much closer game.
I think it could be quite a free-flowing game, which is not necessarily what you expect from a Wales side, especially up against France, because you don't necessarily want to play them at their own, which is where they could get picked apart. But I think that's what Wales actually have their strongest assets is in their sort of wide players and outside backs and the flair that they can produce. So I think they'll want to lean into that, despite it being against the French, who are kind of known for that up and down each age grade level. But yeah, I'll agree with you on a French win, but as you say, Wales are not going to roll over this Six Nations at under 20s level. So I'd imagine, I think it could be quite a high scoring event in which Wales come out with quite a few tries, but have sort of let too many in.
Yeah, I think you could be right. I think it'll be Well worth tuning into on
Yeah.
Saturday. Right, a change of pace. We've been on for hours, so a change of pace. We're gonna just quickly skirt over some under 18 stuff, specifically the under 18 Academy League, and just touch on the launch of the Next Gen 15 Global Schools Challenge for 2025, and maybe a brief mention of some live streaming that might be happening this Sunday. But to start off with the under 18 Academy League, obviously the rearranged fixture between Sale Sharks and Northampton Saints took place last weekend. Saints getting the victory. Turns out dramatic victory as well. Tight game, and then a late score for Northampton Saints gets them the victory, keeps them unbeaten, keeps them at the top of that North Pool, keeps them on track for a third final in a row. For Sale Sharks, on the other hand, back-to-back defeats from their two games. But clearly a sign of improvement running Saints that close, and again it just makes you think if only they'd got this campaign running from the start, they might have a little bit more momentum and be on pace with everyone else in terms of that progress as a unit.
Absolutely. I can just echo that. And I think Northampton have put themselves in a pretty good position to finish top again, which is pretty good going considering they've this is their last year was potentially their final year, we assumed, of their golden generation, I guess, in that they had so many names that there were kind of shoo-ins into not only sort of their senior academy but England setups, as we've obviously seen. But they look like they're on track for another final. I think they've still got to play Leicester, haven't they?
Yeah, Leicester this weekend.
Yeah, that's the big one. That's the big one. That will basically be the semi-final, as it were, in a weird way, because whoever wins that will probably top the group. So that'll be one to keep an eye out for.
Yeah, and so this weekend, round 4, the penultimate round, it really has flown through. I mean, having only 11 teams, 2 conferences, it certainly gets to the business end pretty sharpish. 4 on Saturday, 1 on Sunday. We'll actually start on Sunday because there's a couple of games on Saturday that are worth us particularly picking out. Sunday, Sale against Newcastle. Sale, obviously, as we've mentioned, that weird start to the tournament with the cancellation and then a gap weekend. They were almost out of it before they got to play a game. Newcastle competed well against Tigers, but struggled against Northampton Saints. Suggest we could be in for a good game. I'd probably lean Sale. I think how rapidly they've improved from week 1 to week 2 from their perspective is quite impressive, but should be a decent game.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. It's always quite exciting from a neutral point of view to see 2 quite hurt sides come up against each other, because they're both going to try and prove a point. And look, it's not necessarily just about who finishes top. They'll want to finish in a good position in that northern bracket, because they'll be spirited to do so. And come up against the best opposition they can in a fortnight's time at Kingsholm. So I do think Sale will win, but I think there's going to be some real fight shown in that game.
And actually, there's another layer to things in that North Pool, which is that because it's a 16 pool and the South Pool is a 5-team pool, one side is going to miss out on a finals day fixture. And so playing not to be the team that misses out is a massive factor, I think, for these sides in the North Pool.
Interestingly, I have heard that all I will say is that every team is going to play at finals day.
Oh.
I don't know. I genuinely don't know how much I'm allowed to reveal as of yet. But I will say that every team's going to be playing at finals day. And every team will have a good matchup. So I think that will be exciting. But regardless, as I say, they will not want to finish towards the bottom, because it's a pride thing more than anything.
100%. Well, that's very exciting news. We're looking forward to when you get to break that exclusive.
Probably on the day. I don't know. I genuinely don't know how far this has gone and who's been informed and whatnot. So but yeah, we're on the commentary team for that day live streaming with Pembrokeby. So there's still going to be a full complement of 6 games for you to stick your teeth into.
Oh, well, very exciting. And then the Saturday fixtures, again, we're sort of
Yes.
reverse engineering this. Very quickly, Exeter against Gloucester, both looking for a first victory. Gloucester got that draw last time out against Bristol Bears. Exeter coming off the back of a tough outing at Saracens, but back at home now. Should be another good tight game, not least because Gloucester only deal in good tight games. Probably lean Gloucester, I think, on this one.
Yeah, again, I'll agree with you. Because I do think that they've been it's what could have been for Gloucester, a couple points here and there, and they could have replaced Harlequins in that kind of 3-horse race for that top spot in the southern bracket. So I think they'll probably finish 4th, which is a really good sort of project and trend for them. Because it's so tight up at the top of that southern bracket. But who knows? Like, I mean, Quinn's Bath could fall off a cliff. Like, I can't believe I'm saying that, but they could, because obviously they go from obviously that loss against Quinn's last weekend. They play Saracens this weekend. If they lose that game, then it will come down to that final match to see where they land. So it's still very much all to play for, and I think Gloucester will have that in the back of their minds, and they could put on a good showing.
For sure, we'll touch on that Bath Saracens game in a second, but
Yeah.
first, quickly, Harlequins Bristol Bears, which always just makes me think of Bristol
Yeah.
a couple of years back. I just always assume, well, this is going to be an absolute cracker of a game. I suspect it probably will be a bit of a cracker of a game. Bristol, they'll be happy with getting that draw against Gloucester the previous round. Quins obviously will be riding high, having beaten Bath, but two sides that don't mind having a go. Again, though, I think it's you got to lean Quins unbeaten, particularly with Bath and Saracens facing each other. They're probably going to be looking at this and going, "This could be where we cement a place in that final."
Yeah, I agree. It could be a chance for them to sort of peel away from the pack and they could do just that. But as you say, it's going to be a great game because there's two teams that just love to shut the ball around and don't kick that much. So it could be really exciting. It is. I mean, we talk about him each week, but we have the right to do so. Sean Sharp. It could be his weekend of sort of where he goes from sort of having great performances to right. This is pretty special because that Bristol defense, in fact, could part ways for him in nice sort of areas, just because of the way that Bristol play. So again, another interesting one, but I'd say Quinn's there.
Yeah, it'll be a fun one to watch. And then obviously the big one in that South Pool, Bath against Saracens. In Bath, if Bath want to retain their title, they have to win. Saracens, meanwhile, unbeaten, playing fantastic rugby, looking pretty close to untouchable at the moment, but this will be their biggest test of the campaign to date. Huge game.
Yeah, massive. So very, very exciting. Both teams coming at with different sort of angles. One main piece of information and the sort of the asterisks across all of this is that Noah Caliori, Saracens' best player, has been training with England under-20s this week. And there's also an opportunity that he could potentially be called up into senior action. Could with the injury trouble and international availability that Saracens have got this weekend. So he could be unavailable when that's sort of what we've heard at the moment. That could be a potential. And a massive loss to Saracens, losing a player.
Yeah, they'll miss his try scoring, that's for sure.
Exactly, he's scored tries for fun across the course of this campaign. So, but they've got a number of players who could step into that role. But we're not sure whether he'll be available. But either way, it's going to be fascinating stuff.
Yeah, massively so. Which way are you leaning on this one?
I'm gonna say it's gonna be a Saracens win away from home because I think you're gonna go Bath and I want to split the difference.
Well, that's going to be big. I think you're right. I think I am going to go Bath. Although I mean, I could easily be talked into Saracens. I wouldn't even need to be talked into it. Really, it'd be a sort of half a nudge, and I'd be there. But I think off the back of defeat last week, this Bath group again, what a couple of weeks ago, this Bath group are going to be very determined, and I think that might just give them enough of an edge, particularly at home. Game of the weekend. Well, is it game of the weekend? Because the other game is the final game in the North Pool, Northampton Saints against Leicester Tigers, top of the table clash. You probably have to say winners in the final.
Yeah.
Huge game.
Massive, massive, and I certainly believe that, as I said before, this is like a semi-final, because they've kind of separated themselves from the pack. There's nothing that stood out from both sides to say, oh, okay, there's your finalist so far. I think both teams have beaten the other teams in the pool relatively well, but nothing convincing, no statements, no sort of absolute thrashings. Given context that we've had. So it's going to come down to this game. Look, I think Northampton Saints, it's just something about them in this competition that they really enjoy. They've been playing some lovely rugby, and I think that they could edge it over a Leicester Tigers side this weekend.
Should be very exciting. I think I agree with you as well. I think Saints probably just have the momentum that they've built in the last few weeks. I think gives them the edge for me. Right, so that's the Academy League. The big breaking news here at NextGen15 over the course of the last 7 days since we last spoke was that the 2025 NextGen15 Global Schools Challenge has been launched 14th to the 19th of December in the Mediterranean Sports Hub in Salou in Spain, which, if you don't know where that is just outside of Barcelona. So should be all right.
Could be all right, yeah. Be all right, won't it?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'm frantically checking the schedules to see if Barcelona are playing that week, and if they're at home, I could do with advance notice of the fixture list for that. But it's going to be really exciting. Got an expanded rugby program from last year. There's also a couple of new sports being added to try and add a little bit more diversity into the Global Schools Challenge, get some girls teams across and stuff, and I'm actually heading out to the Mediterranean Sports Hub in a couple of weeks' time to go and
poor you.
Check it out in person. I know. Well, we all need a mid-season break, don't we? And a little trip to Spain is going to do
purely business. Just no sun taken in, just sort of.
No. Any appearance of enjoying myself is purely coincidental. It's all strictly business, strictly sport. But no, it should be very good. And continuing the draft from last year, so that if people aren't involved with their schools, or their schools aren't involved, there's still an opportunity for individuals that are really keen to get themselves involved and get themselves to be part of a team. Which we'll try our best not to get lucky this year and have the Next Gen 15 team actually winning that competition. That was a slightly awkward moment. Although always good to be part of a winning team, even from the sidelines.
I was surprised you didn't come on like a little John Terry and sort of come on in the kit and give it big trophy lift at the end. I was surprised that you didn't do that, but maybe
a disappointing level of self-control. I think it's something that will have to be fixed at some point in the future. I think I think boots, gum shield, the works. It's got to be done.
100%. Scrum cap, tape, everything. I mean, look, I obviously was. We were deep in contractual negotiations this time. Back in December, weren't we?
We were
stuck round the table. Just before I sort of linked up with NextGen officially. So just sort of was able to see sort of the effort and excitement that goes into this challenge, Global Schools Challenge. And I'm so excited to kind of be able to watch on from a closer angle this time round, and and see what goes on, because it's turning into a really, really special tournament. For it to have so much success on year one is so rare for something that takes so much intricacy and detail, and it's only going to get better from here. And if the first year's anything to go by, it's going to be pretty special.
Yeah, it should be great fun and good to have World Rugby, Rugby Pass, and Super Sport schools on board as well for this year. But yeah, very excited to be sort of in Europe, a little closer to home. A slightly shorter flight this year for those of us based up in the Northern Hemisphere, so it should be very good fun. If anyone wants to find out more about the Global Schools Challenge, you can head to the Global Schools Challenge website, which is, as you'd expect, globalschools.challenge.com. But also to register any interest or anything like that, please give Tom Pullen a shout. It's tom@nextgen15.com, tom@nextgenxv.com, to register any interest and find out any information, and he'll be more than happy to help, as will I. If you've got my contact details, you can fire away to me. More domestically, we've got live rugby this Sunday, assuming the weather holds out. We got excited last week about the Seaford 10s, and then the weather got in the way, and no storm warnings as yet, although there has been a lot of rain. But the Hurst Point College 7s is going to be live on Next Gen 15 this Sunday. 16 schools all competing down in Sussex from 10 a.m. That's all going to be on the Next Gen 15 YouTube channel. Should be a fantastic one. Some big names. Dulwich College going, Brighton College going, Seaford College are back in action again. Eton College coming down. So there's a Tunbridge as well. I think. I mean, it's a real who's who of big sides from the southeast of England. So it should be a really good one. We'll be previewing that either later on today or tomorrow, depending on when you are listening to this. But yeah, it's going to be a big one. 10 o'clock on Sunday, live from Hurst Point College. I think that's everything, Will, isn't it? I mean, well, if anyone's made it through this much, then hats off to them. Maybe suggest to people that they break it into chunks and listen at their pleasure. But it's been good. It's been good to hear from the inner workings of the England camp.
Yeah, brilliant. And we hope to kind of bring more and more of that over the next couple of weeks. Speak to some new fresh faces. It's always great to hear from them, because, as we say, we don't, in previous years, haven't had much access, and that's credit to the RFU, and we're going to try and capitalise on that as much as possible, and speak to as many people as we can.
Yeah, and one question I didn't ask them that I was meaning to was, given that the senior side have been out in Girona this last week, how come the under-20s boys didn't get to go to Pennyhill Park and enjoy their 5-star luxury?
Yeah.
They've been out at Bisham Abbey. I mean, it's not too shabby, of course, but they surely deserve a couple of nights at Pennyhill Park. I might raise that with them next time. See if I can do my bit for the team, get them the luxury treatment for a couple of days.
Exactly, and hopefully if we make the suggestion, then maybe we get the invite and we can have little sort of, I don't know. I think there's some pastries that look quite nice at Pennyhill Park.
Some nice pastries. There's a good spa. I can have a very relaxing day there.
Yeah, we could pretend that we're training for some sort of rugby and just sort of sit in saunas all day. I think that sounds like quite maybe a pod from the sauna.
Pod from the sauna, Park. Yeah, absolutely. Let's
do that.
Right,
everyone would definitely tune into that. That is content gold, confirmed. Us doing a sauna, chatting code would just it sells tickets. Maybe it's a live event. Who knows?
Well, absolutely, it's definitely a spectator sport. That's for sure. Right, that's everything from us then. We'll be back again next week. Yeah, on that bombshell. We'll be back again next week with some thoughts on the opening round of the 20s, and indeed on round 4 of the Academy League, and hopefully a little look at the Hurst Point 7s as well. And I'm sure any breaking news between now and then. But in the meantime, thanks very much for joining us. Thanks for listening. Thank you, Will, as ever, for joining me.
Thank you.
And we will catch you next time.